It's time to talk Breeders' Cup Saturday. Jeremy Plonk from Express Bet and First Bet, joined by the official morning line maker of the 41st Breeders' Cup, Mr. Jeff Siegel. Jeff, the hard work is done for you in terms of making the odds. Now we got to make some winners and make some money out of this Breeders' Cup. We're going to handicap all 9 races on the podcast this week. I'm looking forward to it.
Trying to figure out what the public is going to make these horses is one exercise in handicapping. Then you have to figure, okay, that's done. Now who's going to win and who do I bet on? Well, that's what this show is for. You do a lot of research. You try to figure out, who the contenders are. But now it's a little bit different because now you're trying to look at trips and who might run better than they're supposed to and how the track's playing. Factor in all these kind of things that are going to make this profitable for the gambler. And that's what we'll do here on the Saturday and the 9 races on Saturday, all very challenging. And I want to say one thing quickly, Jeremy. This is maybe I've felt this before, but I really feel that this year there are several horses in every race that could win and not surprise me in the least. Obviously, you like a few better than others, but there's some good prices in here for sure that can be gambled on. So let's dive in and see if we can make everybody some money.
We want to welcome everybody who is tuning in through the First Breeders' Cup Wager Guide. This podcast embedded in the Wager Guide. If you're new to the First Call podcast, we do it each and every Friday. We moved it up a day in terms of our recording this week because of Breeders' Cup Championship Friday and Saturday. For more on Jeff's Friday analysis, be sure to check out the blog section at expressbet.com and at news.first.com. He'll have write-ups of the Breeders' Cup Friday races, but we are going to focus on the Saturday 9. You get a little bonus 9th race coverage this week on the First Call podcast. Here they are in order. We'll start things out in the filly and mare sprint. We'll go to the turf sprint. Then the big 3, the Breeders' Cup Distaff, the turf and the classic, middle of the card to accommodate NBC Sports college football schedule for the national broadcast. The filly and mare turf, the sprint, the mile, and the dirt mile will wrap things up. And again, be sure to check out the First Breeders' Cup Wager Guide. Go to first.com. That's 1st.com/guide. And you can get access to the digital updated wager guide. A lot of great information in there, analysis, replays. You've got workouts. You've got everything you need to watch and wager on the Breeders' Cup with confidence with First Bet and Express Bet. And we want to welcome you to play with us this weekend at First Bet and Express Bet because we've got the $20,000 exactathon rocking on for the Breeders' Cup. That means if you hit 6 exactas or more, $2 minimum bets on Friday, or 6 exactas, $2 minimum or more on Saturday, you'll share in $10,000 in potential prize money each day. So $20,000 up for grabs. If you're playing the Breeders' Cup and you're looking at exactas, there is one great place to do it, and that is with us, First Bet and Express Bet. So be sure to play along with the exactathon. Anytime you play in a promotion, make sure you opt into the promo when you're in your wagering account to take part. Okay, Jeff Siegel, let's get handicapping here. We're going to start with the 4th race on Saturday, the Breeders' Cup Filly and Mare Sprint. Goodnight Olive has won this race the last 2 years in a row for trainer Chad Brown. She has retired. She may pass the baton to a stablemate, Ways and Means. She's a 3-year-old filly who was a Kentucky Oaks filly earlier in the year. She's cut back in trip of late, and man, has she done it with style. She's the morning line favorite, Ways and Means. Let's start the discussion with her. What do you make of her in the filly and mare sprint?
I could easily see her win. I like where she's drawn. She's going to be outside the other speed. She's got the ability to stalk, pounce, and go. I think 7/8 is a perfect distance for her. I laid her at 5-2. She might go a little lower than that. I have a lot of respect for the filly that she's going to have to go by, and that's Society. She's not going to wave the white flag. I mean, Ways and Means, when she goes after her somewhere onto the far turn, is going to find a second quarter in there in 22 and change, and that could be a little grueling, especially when you have a race that has horses that can sit in the middle and make a run. And I'm talking about a horse like Vava. So it's going to be an intriguing race. It's a tactical race. Ways and Means, the only reason why I'm a little concerned about her is that she's going to get play off her very impressive New York form. And both of her last 2 races, visually very pleasing, but were on off tracks. So that might have moved her up. Also, she's been known to fail at odds on. She did that a couple of times as a 2-year-old. So there are a couple of checks and balances here for me that prevent me from going all in on Ways and Means. I do think Society is a good filly, but she's going to have to endure the heat that Ways and Means is going to apply into the far turn. That could soften up for the trip horse, because I think Vava is going to drop into a great spot. And, on her best day, she is right there with these. She doesn't quite have the numbers that the other two have on a consistent basis. And certainly she was disappointed in her last start. But Vava freshened, pointed for this race. 7/8, again, a great distance for her. And with a pace scenario, that's going to be favorable. If I'm gambling, on top, I'm trying to press a little bit. I think a Vava might be my top selection. But if I'm playing rolling exotics, the other two fillies, Ways and Means and Society, they have to find themselves on my ticket somewhere.
I find Vava to be the most trustworthy of the three. She's going to run her race, whether or not it's good enough. If the other two run their most brilliant race, they're probably more brilliant than she is. But she's the one that just looks reliable. I can't find a hole in her game looking at what she's potentially capable of doing in this race. She's going to run her race. As for Society, she's really kind of fickle, right? She's all or nothing. She's kind of the fierceness of the sprint fillies, right? When she's on, she is super on. When she's off, she's, not that great. And look, she took 4 weeks to get back on the workout tab after the race in August at Saratoga, where she was unbelievable. But she's only had 2 starts this year. She's only had 14 through a 5-year-old season that's about to end. So I don't know how reliable she is. And you look at Ways and Means, like you said, the 2 off-track races. But the one thing about Ways and Means is she's got in her corner, she has pressing speed, but man, is she a finisher. I like the Bristol.
Yeah.
Late pace figures when I'm looking at these races, 7/8 of a mile. Who's going to finish that last furlong? Ways and Means has 101 to 104 late pace figures. That is really impressive for a filly who's got speed to be up in the race and finish like that. That doesn't give the opposition a lot to work with, right? I mean, if you're up on the lead and you're finishing that strong, there's not a lot of weakness there. So she could replicate that kind of sloppy track, wet track form on the fast dirt. She's won on fast dirt before, but the last 2 were exceptional. Ways and Means, Vava, to me, are the 2 in here that I'll be looking at. The other thing to knock on Society, I think she's definitely going to be in the front of this race. This is one of the weirdest stats in Breeders' Cup. The pacemaker in the Breeders' Cup Filly and Mare Sprint, 0 for 17 with 2 seconds and 2/3. This race is not one wire to wire, and we will see if Society can do so, because I think if Society is to win this race, it would have to be wire to wire for her, and I think there's a good chance in here that she won't be the one. Vava, Ways and Means, the 2 that I like in here, and I'm with you on that. So let's go ahead.
I was going to say that Society's is very important horse in this race, because she is going to have to carry Ways and Means for a while for the others to catch him. If she waves the white flag at the 3/8 pole and Ways and Means kind of can cruise there without being used, she's probably not going to look back.
Correct.
But if Society can carry the race at least to the top of the stretch and make Ways and Means go after her and use herself, that's when Vava says, "Thank you very much. I'll tag you late." That's the way the race shapes up. And now when we get to this point of the handicapping process, that's the final step. Okay, who's going to get promoted by the race shape and the race flow, and who's going to be victimized? And the way you set the race up, and we both come with the same conclusion. I think hopefully that they run to the pace situation runs to where we expect it to. One Magic filly could throw a monkey wrench in there, because she's pretty quick too, and I don't know how much they use her from the 2-hole. She could press the issue even more, and then again that helps Vava.
Yep, absolutely. Let's go to race number 5. It is the Breeders' Cup Turf Sprint, 5/8 of a mile at Del Mar for the Turf Sprint distance. We've seen, Peter Miller have some success in this race with some locals over the years when it's been run at Del Mar. We've got the really good local in here, Motorius, who is a horse for course. Motorius has never lost over the course here at Del Mar, but the Breeders' Cup Turf Sprint this year has one of the strongest international flavors it's had in years, and it also has the strongest American shipper that we've seen coming in for a Breeders' Cup Turf Sprint, maybe in the history of this race, Jeff, in Cogburn. He goes east to west, but he's traveled up and down the East Coast this year into the Midwest with no problems to this point. This race runs through Cogburn, doesn't it?
It does, because he's fast enough to make the lead, but he's good enough to give you a second or a third move. He's not one of these horses that has to open up and hang on for dear life. He always seems to find more in the final furlong. So if he's in front, how are you going to catch him?
Mhm.
I have him 7-5. I'm not on the morning line. I'm not saying there's a lot of value there, but I do think that because there is a rather significant difference between the first and second choices here, when that happens, the favorite almost always gets overbet.
Mhm.
In this case, I don't know whether Cogburn can actually get overbet, because if you're betting taking a short price, who else on the 14 race Breeders' Cup program, a couple of programs, would you rather have than Cogburn? If you're alive to the pick six and you got Cogburn, where else would you want to be? I mean,
Right.
for the last leg. So I like him. I'm trying to figure out who can press him early, and again, that's not going to work because he doesn't need the lead.
Mhm.
So if AG Bullet busts out there and goes, and she's going to be very fast, and obviously she's another one of these kind of course specialists, 5'8" specialists. She can run a half mile with just about anybody, and I think they'll send her from the inside. But again, Cogburn drawn outside her, he can just kind of sit and wait. As for Motorius, I mean, he is a prototype late running 5 furlong turf sprinter, and he loves Top of the Gun and he loves Del Mar. I just don't know whether he can kick as fast to make an impact on Cogburn unless Cogburn just runs down to his level. So me, I don't know how you feel about this, Jeremy, but if it's not Cogburn, then would you double the race with another horse, and who would that be?
No, I think it would be a spread situation. If it's not Cogburn, it's single or
Anybody, right?
spread.
Yeah.
If you're looking at a race like this, there are a lot of good options in here. If you're looking at exotics for potential prices, I mean, I think a couple 30 to ones. Starlust interests me very much in here. Howard Wolowitz off the last couple of races has really gotten good in turf sprints for Jose D'Angelo. It would not shock me to get a little piece of the underneath. So yes, if not for Cogburn in here, I think it really opens up. You've got the outside two in the starting gate from Europe, Big Evs and Bradsell. We know Big Evs can handle the tracks coming to the U.S., came to Santa Anita last year, won the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Turf Sprint. That was the race where Starlust rallied really strongly to finish third, also has shown an ability to come here to the U.S. and be successful. As for Bradsell, he made the trip here last year to the Breeders' Cup, was a vet scratch at Santa Anita before the Turf Sprint, so he hopefully will get his first shot at a Breeders' Cup race. He's highly talented. I mean, one of those horses on the straight that is really difficult to beat over in Europe, but this isn't the straight here, and an outside horse who's been used to running with no turns. That first turn is going to come up on Big Evs and Bradsell really quickly here, going 5 furlongs at Del Mar, and they've got to make that left-hand turn early. Just kind of changes their game completely. So I don't like the outside draw for those Europeans. I would try to, with a ton of respect for Big Evs and Bradsell, I would try to get both of them out of the number here and work something else. And I do love the draw for Starlust. And I think of the Europeans, this one is really interesting. Starlust finished right on the tail of Bradsell and Believing in the Nunthorpe at just 12 to 1 in the Nunthorpe. This horse ran poorly last time in France on soft ground. You get back to top of the ground running. I think the 4 Starlust is really interesting in here. And I love post 3, 4, 5 in turf sprints. You're not the couple down on the rail who the field comes down on. You're not stuck out wide with the quick run into the turn. I think really a good draw in here for the 4 Starlust. I'm going to try to get that one in my exotics. It's Cogburn and Starlust. Cogburn keyed on top, Starlust in the second and third spots. And I'm going to try to make some bingo in there, try to hit something else. I mean, if we can get 2 long shots in the try, we're really looking at something, even with the favorite in there. But that's the way I'm going to attack the Breeders' Cup Sprint. I really want to try to find somebody to go underneath Cogburn in here. I'm going to trust him quite a bit, Jeff, because simply put, he's been too good. He handled the quirky surface at Kentucky Downs last time, and I have no doubt that he'll handle it just as well here.
It is Cogburn to catch, 3/16 to go. No balls on the outside, moves up into second. Charcoal is down toward the inside, but Cogburn is opened up. Cogburn is opened up by 3. Then No Balls in second, one-timer, and Charcoal on the inside. No doubt about it. It is Cogburn. Cogburn scores by 4.
I'll give you the last word on the turf sprint.
Well, I would also throw in, and then using the same philosophy and theory that you're employing. I think though that Star of Mystery's got a really good chance to produce a late kick. I think she's a good filly, and I'm not going to get beat in any race in which Charlie Appleby and William Buick are teaming up, and she's
right.
10-1. I don't know whether she's got the tactical speed and will be given too much to do to win, but she can close as well as anybody. And she's got 2 triple-digit buyer numbers in the 3 races she ran. Both were at Saratoga. Very fast, firm ground. She's going to be firm ground here. And If anybody's going to get worn out chasing, and I think the Euros are in really deep water here, as for the reasons you mentioned. I don't like where they're drawn, and I mean, as good as Bradstone is, they're going to have to send him out there hard to get over. And you watch these European straightaway sprints that they don't send him that hard. They don't have to. And now he's going to, and then he hits the far turn, and now where he's in no man's land out there, already being used. The configuration of the course, the quick turn, the short stretch, all works against him. So I like Cogburn, and your theories about who might run second and third are very, very sound. I would only make sure that if I'm playing the Star of Mysteries on that, I'll tick it underneath somewhere.
No doubt she was best last time out at Keeneland. She had a terrible trip from down in the one hole and almost pulled it off. That's what I say. I don't like to be too far inside, and I don't like to be too far outside in these 5.5 furlong type turf sprints at these kind of mile configuration racetracks. So that's a look at the Breeders' Cup Turf Sprint. Let's move now to the big three on the Saturday card: the Distaff, the Turf, and the Classic, part of the NBC Sports main broadcast. The Distaff, of course, one of the 7 original Breeders' Cup races going back to the 1984 inaugural at Hollywood Park. Sometimes we get major league favorites in the Breeders' Cup Distaff, and fillies and mares who are just, superior in the division. Some years we get complete chaos in this race. It's kind of one of those up and down divisions, and it kind of feels a little bit the same this year, Jeff. If not Torpedo Anna, maybe something crazy in this year's race, but Torpedo Anna is going to be an odds-on favorite. It's a race that just keeps falling apart nationally. We lost to Darren Manor about 3 or 4 weeks ago, who would have been one of the favorites in here. About a week or so ago, we lost Idiomatic, the defending champion in this race, and already announced in scratches their long shots, but number 3, Batacuda, and number 8, Miss New York, are out of the Distaff. So at best, we're looking at a field of 8. You've got the headliner still in here. She would have been favored no matter who showed up, I think she would have been favored over Idiomatic, but now you're really looking at a heavy favorite in Torpedo Anna.
There's only one way to play this race, and that is, as far as I can say, well, maybe one way, 2 ways maybe, but Torpedo Anna, either you single her and assume that she's going to bounce back. I have not seen her breeze, but all reports are that she is sharp and ready to bounce back with a big effort. Her effort, obviously, in the Travers would be more than likely easily good enough to win this race. Pace scenario looks comfortable for her. She's not going to have to deal with any slow pace or fast pace. She's going to get a great trip. That's why she's 4 to 5 on the morning line. The only X factor for me here is obviously the undefeated, and we don't know how good she is. Japanese Invader, awesome result, 7 for 7. She's not been facing the best over there, but she's been dismantling them with authority. And then you look at her and you see, okay, she's by Justify, so that kind of adds a little bit of icing on the cake if you like her, because you don't have to worry. You know what they can be, and I'm not sure. And she's fresh filly, and she's got speed, and she's a high quality. I think she's a high quality filly. Sometimes the Japanese form can fool you, but she's kind of the X factor. It's one of these things where Torpedo Anna doesn't need a horse like Awesome Result. We know she can handle everybody else. Right. But that's the X factor. And I'm very curious to see and very interested to see 2 things: how much money she'll take and whether or not she can be competitive on the world stage. And I think she's going to take some money, and I think that's the viable alternative to anybody who doesn't want to take a short price on Torpedo Anna.
What is too short of a price on Awesome Result, though? There's a lot of question mark. Like you said, this is the X factor. We don't know what kind of competition she's been taking on. She's taken on a really well-known and renowned filly here. Not to mention Raging Sea, who's had a good resume this year. Hasn't been lights out necessarily in terms of being fast or being dazzling, but she wins, and she's had a great season. I'm not really into Raging Sea in this spot. Torpedo Anna, too short of a price to take. It is the kickoff leg to an all-dirt pick 4, also a traditional pick 4 on the next 4 races. So, is it just take Torpedo Anna as a single? If you are going to bet Awesome Result, though, Jeff, I'm trying to think. I mean, I think your line is right about on the fair odds line for me as well. Anything less than 4-1, I'm not willing to take the risk on this filly. I think she could very well win, but I want to get paid. If I'm going to beat Torpedo Anna and I'm going to take that risk of I know the Japanese won 2 races here the last time the Breeders' Cup was at Del Mar, but those were boxcar payoffs, right? So it's okay to play the Japanese horses back, but to play at too short of a price, I don't think is wise. Like if Awesome Result is 5-2 in this race, I'm like, yeah, that's
on the other hand, you might say if she's 5-2, that's serious money from people who think they know,
yeah.
And because you and I, we look at the Japanese form. I've seen some video of her races, and again, she looks great.
Yeah.
But who the heck knows? I mean, I don't know who she's beating, and if she drifts up 8-9-1. It's lovely for the price, but it may also mean that, what are you guys doing? She's not this level.
Right.
I mean, there are people, the big gamblers are going to have insight maybe that I don't have. So anyway, the bottom line is visually she passes the eye test, but it's really hard for me to believe that as good as she may be, she would have a race like Torpedo Anna had in the Travers to go up to. So, but if you're looking for a second horse, she might be the second horse in absence of anybody else that I like.
Right.
But then you're talking about a short price exacta, and I don't think anybody really wants that either. So this is one of these races where maybe you just sit back and, I mean, if you have to play it, if you're playing rolling exotics, maybe you just bite the bullet and single or Torpedo Anna, maybe save with Awesome Result. But other than that, I can't see wasting any money on anybody else, including the other filly you mentioned, because I'm not been that impressed with Raging Sea. She did win the last race. It was a slow race. I can't see her.
The value with the Awesome Result may be to play her in the multi-race wagers, because there will be a lot of singles on Torpedo Anna, and especially this is the first leg of the pick 4 and the all dirt pick 4, so everybody's going to see the tote. You've got, this filly who's 4-5 on the board, maybe, 3-5. We'll see what the price ends up on Torpedo Anna. And everybody just might concede the race at that point in the multi-race wagers and try to spread and say, okay, give me the favorite here and I'll try to hit some long shots other way. So while you might look at the tote and see 3-1 and say, I don't know if I want 3-1 on Awesome Result, she may play like a lot bigger price in the multi-race wagers if you can beat Torpedo Anna. So to me, that's the approach in there. If you can get 4, 5, 6-1 and bet the win, okay, I'll give you that. But just remember this: 4-1 pays $10 on Saturday, and it pays $10 on the 2nd at Mahoning Valley next week. I mean, 4-1 is 4-1, and if you got to work so hard to beat a horse like Torpedo Anna and get 4-1, you can find easier 4-1s to gamble on somewhere along the line. Now, you can also make the argument the filly should have been 4-5, and I got 4-1. So that's the great thing about the Breeders' Cup: you get tremendous value on very good horses, prices you will never see again on them in any of their other races that you will see on Breeders' Cup Day. Let's turn our attention next to the grass, our first turf route race that we'll talk about on the Saturday card, the Breeders' Cup Turf. It is race number 7, 1.5 miles. Again, one of the original 7 races in the Breeders' Cup, going back to the inaugural 41 years ago. Jeff, the morning line favorite in here is a horse we're familiar with in Breeders' Cup terms, of course, Rebels Romance. 2 years ago, he won this race. He's going for a rare 2-time winner of the Breeders' Cup Turf. Conduit, I believe, the only other to do so. Those were in successive years. Rebels Romance, though, 14 wins from 21 starts. He's age 6. He hasn't run a ton for a 6-year-old, but he doesn't run too many bad ones. He's in good form again. Can he do it at age 6?
I think we discovered him, didn't we, 2 years ago?
Yes, yeah.
We picked him in July as the Breeders' Cup winner, and I don't think anybody even knew who he was,
Right. He was running in Cologne or somewhere. We picked up a German horse to watch on our podcast.
Exactly. Yeah. I looked at Rebels Romance, and kind of like Vava, I just trust him to run. You know what I mean? He's won 4-5 this year, and he's going to fire. But there's an upstart 3-year-old in here that, and doing the research and watching all the video, that really caught my eye. And that's the one that I'm going to gamble on. And I hope he's no lower than what he is on the morning line at 4-1. And that's JRB, French-bred 3-year-old colt by Zoffany. And this is a colt who, if you look at his time form ratings, every race he runs, he gets better and higher ratings. You're in the 117 last time out, in the pre-dollar. He did that on soft ground. I think he's probably just as good, if not better, on firm. He's got that great stalking style. I mean, he won that race virtually on the lead every step of the way, but he's just as comfortable sitting second. And if you look at this race again, trying to project the race shape and the race flow, I mean, wouldn't he just fall into a second or third spot? I mean, they'll say, Cabo Spirit, you want to go, and we'll use you as a prompter. And everybody else in here and watching the videos and trying to figure out the style, they all like to get cover, take back, and then produce a run. And JRB's like an American horse. I mean, you can put him anywhere you want, and he can quicken. And I think he's going to get a great trip, and I think he's got more tactical speed than Rebel's Romance. Doesn't have the resume, but he's only 3, and he's only run the 7 times with 4 wins. 2 races back, he was a very good second to Economics, and that's a very, very top-class horse, a horse that probably would be favored in this race if he were here. So for me, JRB is the key there at 4-1. That's a good gambling number. I think you've got to probably concede that Rebel's Romance is going to be somewhere in the fray. And the others, they all kind of look a little alike. Emily Epjohn is the mare. She earned a 120 time form figure. That was a career top last time out. Not quite a career top, but the best in a while. And she's certainly capable with Frankie to act with this group. So I think those are the 3 main players. The gamble on top for me is JRB.
JRB for trainer Brian Meehan, 2-time winner of the Breeders' Cup Turf, but he doesn't come with the name recognition of Charlie Appleby or the Gosdens or Aidan O'Brien, who's got the Wingspan, the 3-year-old filly in here. No 3-year-old filly has won the Breeders' Cup Turf. We've seen fillies and mares do it. We've seen 3-year-olds, but no 3-year-old filly. So Wingspan would be trying to make some history in here. But with JRB, you're not getting the name connections, even though you've gotten proven connections in the Breeders' Cup with Brian Meehan. I remember Dangerous Midge when he won here in the Breeders' Cup Turf, a horse I liked, looked a lot like this on form, was kind of like a progressive, not at the very top of the European rung yet, and was moving the right direction. And Meehan brings a similar looking horse back here in JRB. The Japanese horse in here, Shariar, is interesting to me. 3rd in this race last year in arguably, not arguably, I think a much better edition of the Breeders' Cup Turf last year. You had Auguste Rodin up to the mark, was like a far better American horse than what we had in here. For this horse to run 3rd at Santa Anita, a similar kind of trip. I think that Shariar is one that we need to take into consideration in here. The second, the Rebels Romance in March, has had that one start off the layoff now. That seems to be the Japanese path to the Breeders' Cup. Run in Dubai, get one race somewhere along the line, and then come second off the layoff to the Breeders' Cup. I think Shariar is interesting in here. But the 5, to me, JRB, looks logical, like you're saying, as well as the alternative, the Rebels Romance, if you don't want to come back to the 6-year-old who won this race a couple years ago. I'm not up on any of the Americans in here of having much shot at all for maybe 3rd, 4th place finish in here. Far Bridge, probably the best of the Americans in this spot, but I just don't think there's a lot in the U.S. this year. I would not be surprised if the Europeans ran 1, 2, 3, 4 in this particular spot. But JRB, top pick in here for Jeff. I'm going to go Shariar over JRB and Rebels Romance. I'm going to do a little 3-5-11 in here, and Jeff's got it, 5-11. Kind of the way you're setting this.
Yeah, I would say Shariar. He hasn't won in 2 years, but he's certainly capable of running in the frame somewhere.
Yeah. All right, we got pretty good agreement on that one. The turf. Let's go next to the main event on Saturday, mid card. It's the 41st edition of the Breeders' Cup Classic. Field of 14 has entered the Classic this year. All the way to the outside of the gate, the X Factor in next. You've got the 3-year-olds in here like Sierra Leone and Fierceness. You've got some older horses in the U.S. who are trying to make their way, like Arthur's Ride, winner of the Whitney, who bounced last time out. Newgate for Bob Baffert represents the West Coast in here. Then the international horses really kind of juice up this race this year. The Japanese with Forever Young and Dermo Sadagaki and the deep closing Ushpa Tesoro, and City of Troy, the morning line favorite. We set the tone with him first up, Jeff Siegel, as we talk about the Epsom Derby winner for Coolmore and Aidan O'Brien, trying to do something they've not had success trying in the past, but we have seen a couple of international winners of the Breeders' Cup Classic over the years. You go back and you think of Arcang, the crazy French winner back in 93. You think of a winner in the synthetic era at Santa Anita, but on the dirt, it's been a long time since we've seen a European have a major impact in the Breeders' Cup Classic. Could it be this year with City of Troy?
Well, he is a European, but he's also a son of Justified bred in Kentucky. So I'm not sure whether he's dual citizenship here or not. But the thing about City of Troy is, in watching him, he does move like a dirt horse. I mean, why wouldn't he? I mean, obviously he can run on grass, but I don't think the change in surface is going to be impactful for him. Now, maybe getting dirt in his face, he may not be that crazy about that. And so you wonder where he's going to be from the 3-hole and what strategy they're going to use. Now, last time out in the Joyman International, he found himself on the lead, but he's also won from way out of it as well, as he did in the Epsom Derby. So I'm curious to see how aggressively they're going to ride the City of Troy leaving the gate and what kind of position he's going to be in. Clearly, I think everybody expects that Arthur's ride will be on the front end, and from where he's drawn, he can kind of cruise to the lead. He doesn't have to be sent hard from the inside draw. He can kind of gradually get over and then see if he can slow it down just a little bit. I do have a morning line that I probably would redo if I could on this race due to the draw. I've got Forever Young on the rail at 6-1 and Next at 8-1 on the 14th hole. And I would absolutely reverse that based on the draw, because we talked about this on Tuesday, how that outside draw might be a negative for some horses, but for Next, it's actually where you want to be. And he can kind of come out of the gate and gather his stride and not having to be sent hard and not have to worry about anybody crossing over and forcing his hand. And if you look at his series of triple-digit buyer numbers, albeit in marathon races, but this horse not only is fast, but he is very versatile, very genuine, obviously can handle any kind of dirt track. And we don't know if he can shorten up, go a mile and a quarter. He's been running marathons just because he's so much better. But I mean, I saw some workouts of him at Turfway on the all-weather. He looks great. So I fear him. But obviously, having said that, if City of Troy duplicates his European form, I don't think anybody's beating him. The one horse I want you to talk me into or out of, Jeremy, I'll lay the burden on you, is Fierceness. I mean, I've always thought of him as being a high ceiling type of horse, but he's always been disappointing. But when you at least expect it, now he's coming on 2 wins at Saratoga. I have not seen any video of him breezing. Do you have a positive or a negative feeling on him one way or the other?
I'm against Fierceness in this spot. Both you and I liked him going into the Kentucky Derby. He was absolutely smashing in the Florida Derby. He's had, the Travers was a good race for him, but I don't think our 3-year-old crop was particularly strong this year. And I thought at a mile and a quarter, he was visually spent in the Travers Stakes. And we could take a look at that here in a second. But what I want you to watch with Fierceness is his up and down action. The legs are just going like this over the last 1/8 of a mile. And it was Torpedo Anna, who nobody's calling her a mile and a quarter horse either necessarily, gathering at him at the wire and the margin diminishing. I don't think Fierceness can take heat from top class older horses, and he's never faced the elders before, and be a mile and a quarter horse. I think he's a very good horse. I don't think he's a mile and a quarter star. I think he won the Travers because he was the best of the crop and he got there. But let's watch this race and you tell me if good horses, world-class horses, are in front of him or behind him, if this kind of finish and leg action is going to win it.
He's 4 lengths off the new leader, Fierceness. 3/4 in 1:11 and 3. They're at the top of the stretch, and Fierceness takes command. Sierra Leone is coming with his run on the outside of Torpedo Anna, who's currently second. They're in the final furlong. Johnny V asking Fierceness for everything he has. 3-length lead. Torpedo Anna running her heart out and coming with every stride. Fierceness, Torpedo Anna in an absolutely dramatic conclusion. The champ is back. Fierceness holds up.
If he is reaching out 10 inches in front of his feet in that last 16th of a mile, then I think we're exaggerating if it's any more than that. I mean, there is not a stride like he's really getting after it. I think he's going to be spent. And I think Arthur's ride being to his outside, Fierceness we're talking about here, Arthur's ride to his outside could cross over in front of him early if that's the path that they want to take. And we've seen Fierceness kind of, give the head thing and not want to settle then after that. And boy, that could just be a disaster. Fierceness, if he wins, I will tip my cap to him. But to me, of the name horses in this race, he's the first toss for me. I did not like the way he finished up in that race. Of course, that race then also sent a reeling Torpedo Anna into the Parks race, the Cotillion, where she ran similarly to that, where she was kind of all out at the end. He's had more time to recover, but I think he needed every bit of that. And I just don't see him in a 1.25 miles, Jeff. Yeah, I mean, you got that Nona Bello on the bottom of the pedigree there. I know Stay Thirsty went long, but the mare was speed by City of Light. I mean, City of Light could get 1 1/8 miles. I'm not sure about 1.25 miles if City of Light would have been that kind of horse. So I'm anti-fierceness in here. I like the horse a lot. Again, you and I, we were thinking he was a cinch in the Kentucky Derby. So
Yeah.
Opinions change, and it's not a knock on fierceness from a I've always been against him standpoint. I've actually turned the corner on him, and I just don't like him in this spot. I mean, you think like a Ushpa Tesoro, the way he picks him up and puts him down the last 1/4 mile, isn't going to catch a horse who's striding out 10 inches. And Ushpa Tesoro may not get any of this race, but there's going to be 4 Ushpa Tesoros running like that at the end. I just can't see him holding anybody off.
And you, as someone who really believes in those late pace figures, I mean, Next can come home as fast as anybody.
Yes.
And the thing about him is he's going to be sitting. He won't be doing the dirty work, I don't think, against Arthur's Ride, who on his best day, again, can carry his speed a long way, and you have to work to get by him. Whereas Next can kind of sit there and kind of say, you guys go ahead, I'll catch up with you. And the way he kicks home and without any dirt in his face, which is why I'm disappointed in myself. Sometimes you look at a race and then you look at it a couple of days later and you say to yourself, I think I blew that. But I do think Text is better than 8-1, and I don't think Fierceness is as good as 3-1. But I was kind of trying to play the public there, and I thought Fierceness would have a bigger backing that maybe he'll get. But
I think he's going to get bet. I think he will get bet. There's no doubt. I mean, he's got a resume. Fierceness has got big numbers. I mean, look, he didn't look visually good, but he got a 111 buyer. He ran a fast race, 2:01.3 for the Travers. He just wasn't fast at the end, and I just don't think that's going to be good enough. Bouncing back against these older horses. He does get a 4-pound weight break. We've seen 3-year-olds win the Classic in the past. I mean, I think you've got him in the right order. Honestly, I think 1, 2, 3, 4. You have the betting order absolutely right. Whether or not the prices shift around a little bit, we'll see. But I think City of Troy will be favored. Fierceness, second choice. I think Forever Young will get bet the third choice. There's some people talking that Forever Young might even vie for favoritism. I thought that might be the case if he had won his big race in Japan, his one prep, the Japan Dirt Classic. If he had won that more emphatically, I thought you would be looking at Forever Young as a potential favorite. But I don't think he'll be vying for favorite. But I think he'll be third choice. And I think Next will be the fourth choice. I think you've got him 1, 2, 3, 4 in here in the right order. And then there's some other good options in here, right? I mean, when you look at horses like Ushpa Tesoro, who's run in this race and has been in some of the biggest races in the world, Dubai Cup World winner, Dubai World Cup winner. I mean, sure. Sierra Leone at 12-1. I would be willing to take Sierra Leone in a head-to-head. Give me Sierra Leone over Fierceness. I think he's going to outfinish him. I don't think
you might be right.
Perfected, but I think he passes him this time.
Yeah, I mean, Fierceness is just as capable of running 11th or whatever as he is winning, right? So we've seen that.
I've talked him into the winner's circle. So if you like Fierceness,
your logic is so sound. I'm kind of thinking that maybe there's other people who are thinking the same thing. So maybe he won't get his bet as much. I mean, for me as the morning line maker, is the race, who cares about that? I want to know how they play, how they bet. That's the true sign of for me whether I did my job or not. And it's tough because it's a lot of the opinions are going to vary on Fierceness, and I'm curious to see where the money lands on there.
From a gambling standpoint, I'm going with Next. He'll be my top choice in here. City of Troy second, Forever Young third, and then I'm going to put Sierra Leone in the fourth spot. So 14, 3, 1, 11. The way I'm lining up this year's Breeders' Cup.
Well, the other thing is that, we're going to see Next again. I mean, if City of Troy wins, that's fine, but he's gone. We'll never see him again. Yeah. But if Next wins, we got a horse we can embrace, right? Down the.
I think there are 3 or 4 legitimate contenders to win this race. I think Next will be the best price of those 3, and he's just got something. He's got that it factor that you can say, well, who was he beating? Well, who at the end of a 1.5 mile gallop in the morning is coming home the last quarter in 22 and change? I mean, he just, he's got something different about him. And And I'm glad they're taking the big bite here. Like, he may have fit better in the turf with the way the pace would shake up and things like that. Good debate to have had, but I'm glad he's taking a big bite at the apple here in the Breeders' Cup, and they're going for the $7 million because he kind of is like Awesome Again back in that undefeated season when nobody beat Awesome Again back in 1998, and everybody said, yeah, but he's been running at Hawthorne in the Hawthorne Gold Cup and races like that. He can't run with Skip Away and Silver Charm and Saki and all those big horses we had back here in that 1998 race. But who got it at the end? The horse who had the unbelievable year. And to me, this has been next year.
I'd love to see it. It'd be kind of fun. He did destroy Krupe, who won the Suburban. So the idea of he's never beaten anybody isn't quite accurate. I mean, so he's just never been given the opportunity. Well, he's got one on Saturday, so that's going to make this race along with City of Troy. Great.
Of the American 3-year-olds, none of them have taken on older horses, so we have no idea what they've beaten, Right. So I don't know. It's when you're matching up resumes, we don't know about the European, like City of Troy. How does that resume match up on dirt? Don't know. 3-year-olds don't know how they match up against older horses, right? The Japanese horses, we really... The one who's probably the most reliable in this race is Ushpa Tesoro. We know how he matches up. He was here and ran okay in the Breeders' Cup Classic last year. He's running the Dubai World Cup. He's probably the most reliable resume on dirt against older horses. In fact, he clearly is, 2-time Dubai World Cup winner. So Ushpa Tesoro is probably the most reliable older dirt horse in this race. The rest of them, we're trying to figure out where they match up. So if you want to say Next hasn't beaten anybody, we don't know what the other ones have beaten either. So we kind of cancel all that out and let your eyeballs do the talking, I think, in this case. And what I see from Next, I think he's capable of winning the Breeders' Cup. But I will say this, in terms of fair odds, 5 or 6 to 1. If he's under 5 or 6 to 1, I certainly wouldn't be diving in on win bet at 7 to 2.
If I could do it over, I would list him no higher than 6 to 1. I can tell you that. So anyway, we're eagerly anticipating. The thing about Ushpa Tesoro, I'll close it at this. Everything you said is true, except for, remember, Del Mar at 1.25 miles is not a real good track for closers. I mean, it's just hard to make a lot of ground. And I do believe he'll run well. I just don't know whether he's good enough to overcome the inherent Del Mar bias at 1.25 miles with that short stretch.
Right. I agree with that. I think your deep closers, you're probably looking at 3rd or 4th at best. I think for the exacta, you want some horses that've got a chance to be somewhat in the mix. Let's go back to the races at race number 9 on Saturday. Filly and Mare Sprint. We're going to hit the final 4 on the program here. Filly and Mare Sprint is, or I should say, Filly and Mare Turf.
Yeah.
1 mile and 3/8 on the grass for $2 million. We do have a scratch in the Filly and Mare Turf. Ylang, the 6 is out for Coolmore and Aidan O'Brien. That was announced yesterday. So we've got 13 entered. So we've got 12 going right now for the Filly and Mare Turf. Jeff Warlock Goddess, one of my favorite horses in training, along with Post Time. They're both running in this final pick 4 on the card. If Warlock Goddess and Post Time both win, I'll be an excited and happy racing fan. But Warlock Goddess, let's talk about her win chances here to win a race she probably should have won the last time it was at Del Mar.
Yeah, she didn't get a good ride that day. I like her. I mean, I know she's age 7. She's probably not as good as she used to be, but I mean, her form this year, there's nothing wrong with it, really. I mean, they kind of gave her a run in her comeback, and she was very rusty in the New York. Then went to Delaware to win a marathon there, a race that she was supposed to win. Comes back and runs a good second in the Flower Bowl over very heavy ground. And then last time out, got beat by a really nice horse, the boys, and ran a race there where they went, again, very slow and over soft ground. And I think over the top of the ground that you'll see at Del Mar in a race that is going to have at least a normal early pace with full Count Felicia in there. I kind of like to see her win. She's one of several that would not surprise me. I think if you're looking at some price horses, Content, who's been victimized by really soft, deep, wet ground that she hates. But you go back to her win at York, in the Yorkshire Oaks. It may not have been the greatest edition of the Yorkshire Oaks, but this may not be the greatest edition of the Filly and Mare Turf either. Right. So I think she's got a chance. Cinderella's Dream has to prove that she can beat older horses, and also whether she can go 1.3 3/8, and also she hasn't been out since early August. I think she's been scratched 1 or 2 times since. She's the one I really wanted to put on top. And if I had to do it over again, I might switch them in the morning line, making Cinderella's Dream the lukewarm favorite over Warlock Goddess. But I think Cinderella's Dream is, I mean, if I heard an interview with Charlie Appleby, he seemed to indicate that she was in good form. And if I had realized that, she might not be 4-1. She might be 5-2. And maybe I'd make Warlock Goddess the other 4-1. I could have reversed those. So, but if I'm playing the race gambling, I can tell you that I can see scenarios that either one would win. So I'm going to use them both.
It's difficult to always come up with the right pace scenario in your pace projections for a race, especially when it comes to the Breeders' Cup. But when you get it right, that is a key to handicapping, projecting the pace of a race. I'm not sure I've seen a Breeders' Cup race more obvious in the 41 years of how the pace scenario is going to shake out. Full Count Felicia is going to the front here, baby. I mean, unless Irad falls off coming out of the starting gate, there is just nobody at all to go. And Didia almost has to follow and be second in here. It's just the Ortiz brothers are going to kind of control this race up front. Sure. Forgive me if you've heard that before as cynical horse players, but I wouldn't be surprised if 2-5 go out there and go as far as you can possibly go in a race. They're both the pace is going to be controlled by those two. I just don't see anybody else who's got a lot of interest in being up anywhere near it. So I think that is a curious factor. I would not be against anyone who wanted to play a little 2-5 in here, a little 5-2 exacta box with the Ortiz brothers. I thought the 12 Soprano was a little interesting for maybe a potential upset in here. Long shot 3-year-old filly. She only got beat a length and a half by the world-class Porta Fortuna, who we'll talk about here in just a little bit. Her last race in the Queen Elizabeth II Challenge Cup was second beaten 6 lengths. And you say, wow, she got it handed to her by 6. I'll tell you, the race She Feels Pretty ran for Cherie DeVoe in that race was as visually impressive as any race I've seen at Keeneland in a long, long time. That was just a spectacular effort from She Feels Pretty. It was a clear-cut second for Soprano. I thought she ran pretty well in that race given. I don't know how far she can run, Jeff. She's out of Star Spangled Banner, a Chossoir Mare. I mean, there's not a ton of distance there. She ran shorter in Europe, so I don't know about the mile and 3/8 for her, but Soprano's interesting to me in here because I think she's better than people will think on the form. And 3-year-old fillies, like we've got with Cinderella's Dream, have had some success here in the past in the filly and mare turf. So I'm not afraid of taking a 3-year-old filly on the rise. I give 12 Soprano a chance in there at a price, but 2, 5, and 12 in here could get you some crazy numbers back in terms of the return. I've got nothing negative on Cinderella's Dream. I've got nothing really negative on Warlike Goddess, but I just think there's some prices in here that we might be able to shop around with. So give me a crazy 2, 5, 12 box, and we'll see if we can't just roll a Yahtzee if we can in the filly and mare turf.
And then some horse like Moira will come in there and split you and make you mad.
And Moira's good too. I'll tell you what. You talk about the reliable ones. She's one of those reliable ones.
She's going to be there. I don't know if she's going to win, but she's going to be there. So again, this is another race. I mentioned at the top of the show. You could see 3 or 4 or 5 horses win it. You'd say, well, okay, I could see it. So.
Filly and Mare Turf has been one of those races where the favorites have not had much luck. 2 wins in the last 17. One of those did come last year, though. So we will see what kind of prices we get in the Filly and Mare Turf.
Spiral was easy to lean on. She was one of these, okay, I like her, move on to the next race.
Right, and there's no Spiral in here, so this is a much more wide-open race, especially amongst the Europeans that are coming over. Let's go next to the Breeders' Cup Sprint, race number 10, 6-furlong sprint, of course. Again, one of the original 7 races in the Breeders' Cup. Jeff, this is a race that doesn't have the established, clear national leader in the sprint division like we get some years, but we've got some horses that are really good right now. Mulligan and Federal Judge in their last 2 races has run as good a preps into the Breeders' Cup as horses we've seen in recent years. Those were outstanding final preps. What we saw in the Forego from Mulligan and what we saw in the Phoenix from Federal Judge, those were Breeders' Cup sprint-worthy type performances leading into the big dance. How do you see this year's sprint?
It's funny because these 2 colts you just mentioned are look kind of similar on the form. Mm-hmm. They're both lightly raced. They're both developing at a proper rate. They've both come off career top wins. And they are, for example, to me, a lot more acceptable for a gamble than a horse that I've loved all along, and that's Skelly, who may not be rising anymore. He might be going the other way. In fact, I think he is. The thing about Federal Judge, though, is he is definitely a committed front runner, even though he has won a race, setting second early. But from the 3-hole, I don't think they're taking him back.
No, he's going.
He is going, in my opinion, assuming they all break, which could obviously the race shape could change if one of them doesn't. Like, for example, Straight No Chaser, you never know whether he's coming out of the gate or not. But if he does, he's very fast. But if Federal Judge comes out of the gate cleanly, I don't see anybody outrunning him among the leading types, the Skellies, Straight No Chasers, those kinds of horses that are very, very fast. If he's the best of that group, he'll win. If he gets softened up to a point where he gets a little late towards the end, and certainly the Del Mar main track, pro speed, short stretch is going to help him, then I can see Milliken sit right behind him, or set right behind the leaders anyway, and then make that last run. He really does give you a second move. Now, he hasn't faced the pace heat that he's going to see here, but he does strike me as a kind of colt that is handy enough to where, something we'll sit here and we'll make a run. And I think he'll do that. And I think he's the one that Federal Judge is going to have to be looking over his shoulder in the final furlong, because I do think Federal Judge is going to take care of the heat. It's just a matter of who might come nail him late. The track, however, at Del Mar, as I mentioned in the short stretch, might carry him all the way. But those are the two that I'm focusing on, Federal Judge and Milligan.
Let's take a look at both of them here in action. Compare for yourself. Let's start first off with Mulligan winning at the Saratoga in the Forego.
They're at the top of the stretch, and Mulligan turns for home, full of run, 3-length lead. Gun Pilot tips out to try and get to him in second. They're in the final furlong, and Mulligan with powerful strides has built it up to 4. Gun Pilot is no match. Neither are any of the others. Mulligan outclasses them in the Forego, wins it by almost 6 lengths.
Trainer Rudy Brisset just kept rolling with his barn from that race at Saratoga in the Forego to the Keeneland meet. Brisset had the best meet he's ever had at Keeneland. He was phenomenal. But nobody was better in stakes races at Keeneland than Brad Cox. He won 6 of them, an all-time record for a Keeneland meet. One of those wins right off the bat on opening day was Federal Judge, and he made just an eye-popping stakes debut in this one.
Federal Judge, the leader, around the turn by a length. Comedy Town goes second, and then Swervin is struggling to keep up. In fact, drops back between horses. Hear My Song moves by to the inside to take third, and then My Buddy B, who swings out to the center of the track for clear running in fourth, but still 6 lengths off the lead. Federal Judge, the leader. Federal Judge into the final furlong, has the lead by 3 lengths. Then Comedy Town is in second position. My Buddy B third, and Nakatomi is still far back to the inside in fourth. And the leaders past the 16th pole. Federal Judge Flavian Pratt to win the stall. Keenan Ogden Phoenix. Win and you're in. Federal Judge.
I said that was his stakes debut. That was his stakes debut for this year. He had run in the Woody Stevens back a ways. An interesting thing is Federal Judge used to be trained by Rudy Brisset. Windstar Farm took him away, took the horse away and sent him to Brad Cox. They've had a lot of success with him with Brad Cox of late, but now Brisset might be able to get the last laugh by beating him with Mulligan. So you got a little rivalry there. He still trains horses for Windstar. So, it's interesting that Brisset has had his hands on both of these horses. At 6 furlongs, maybe Federal Judge is a little faster. That's the distance of the race, but Mulligan is in such good form right now, Jeff. Those are the two main headliners in this race, but it's a deeper sprint than that because they both have a lot of speed. And when you throw Straight No Chaser in there, who's got a ton of speed, Raging Torrent, Skelly, inside, outside for those two, they're probably going to try to hustle in here. I think this is a race where we could get something a little silly from off the pace. I don't know about the win, but of course we saw Aloha West rally and become a one-hit wonder here at Del Mar to win the Breeders' Cup Sprint a couple years back. The track isn't playing the same way at Del Mar this year as it did back then, but Gun Pilot's a little interesting to me here in the sprint. He's one of my long shot plays on the card. I don't know if he can win, but if he runs second, I'll be cashing an exacta for sure. I'm going to wheel him, wheel him in the second spot, maybe get a little bit of win cash on him in here. But I think Gun Pilot winning on Kentucky Derby Day in the Churchill Downs Handicap is good prep, obviously, for this. He's used to running in front of a big crowd, a tight paddock, a lot of hubbub and commotion, and he handled it well. Steve Asmussen trains, of course. Asmussen, one of the top sprint trainers in America over the years, has Matoli and all these great champions in the sprint ranks in recent years. Skelly's going to be the front runner of the Asmussen pair for sure. Gun Pilot coming from off of it. I don't know. I just get a feeling something a little goofy is going to run top 2 in here. Maybe not pull the upset because there's just so many good speed horses.
It's a good race. It really is. And again, it's a kind of a race within a race, Jeremy, when you're watching it. You're going to watch the race, but all eyes will be on the first quarter of a mile. Mm-hmm. That'll dictate. If one of them clears off on this track, they might not look back. But if you see a 3-horse spread down the backstretch, you're going to say to yourself, whoever wins this race is going to have to be almost like Dr. Fager to take that kind of heat.
Yeah.
Because they're all good enough to press each other. And then if one can shake loose, all more power to them. Good race, and a reasonably decent gambling race, because I don't think I made Federal Judge the 3-1 morning line favorite. That's about as lukewarm as it's going to get. Yeah. And but that's the way the race figures to be bet, and we'll see what happens.
Just a couple other notes, too, on this race. Nakatomi was 3rd in this race last year, the Breeders' Cup Sprint. He just came off that runner-up in the Phoenix. He was well beaten by Federal Judge, but he was actually favored over Federal Judge in that spot. Now the price balloons on him. If you think the pace gets softened up, Nakatomi's not a great finisher, but he's just solid all the way through the wire, and they may come back to him. He could be a factor. And the other thing I want to mention in here, Don Frankie, the Japanese runner in here, made the lead in the Golden Shaheen in Dubai. I mean, he was on top in that race. So when you talk about, okay, all the great American speed in here, Don Frankie's pretty quick too. So if you're just wondering where the international horses might fall in this race, Don Frankie could be up on that pace too. I don't know if he's fast enough to get completely on top against this group, but to get on top in the Dubai Golden Shaheen, it takes some real speed to do that. So he's interesting as part of the pace more.
I don't want to dwell on this too much. I don't want to finish it up with Remake here because I want to give him a little bit of a tout.
Sure.
He's a good horse, and he's won 9 out of 18. He's coming off a win in a 15-runner race at Korea and beat an American horse, Anarchist, who isn't quite this good, but he's decent, So it's not like he hasn't beaten a good horse. He's also capable of rallying if there's a pace meltdown. So there's another horse we haven't mentioned who has a legitimate chance and probably should be thrown on your ticket somewhere.
I'm going to go for the I'm not sure who's going to win, but I'm going to get Gun Pilot second.
All right,
all two, the way I'm playing the Breeders' Cup Sprint this year.
All right.
Let's go to the mile. We go to the grass here for the FanDuel Breeders' Cup Mile, Grade 1 race here. $2 million, the purse for the Breeders' Cup Mile. We've got notable speech for trainer Charlie Appleby. Appleby's got, 3 miles in a row? He's going for 4. Is that the case? Or 3 going for 4? Does the race run through notable speech?
Well, Jeremy, this is challenging for sure. I mean, you could make a case for horses that are 15, 20 to 1, and you'd have a legitimate chance to get the horse on the frame. I put notable speech on top, Jeremy, because I watched his race in the Sussex, and he really quickened like a good horse. Mm-hmm. Won the 2000 Guinea, so he's one of these horses that looks like he will rise to the occasion. Now, he did not run well at Longchamp in his last start. But again, the ground was soft. I don't think he was that thrilled with it. He's a firm ground horse who's got enough tactical speed to lay in the second flight. He's kind of like Johannes, only I think he might be a better version of Johannes because he sits there and then you push a button and he goes like that. Not to mention the fact, again, you got Appleby and Buick. So I made him 7-2. And I think he probably deserves to be somewhere in that area. But again, I'm not exactly taking a stand when I make a 7-2 morning line favorite because there's so many others in here that on paper look good. I know that you like the filly, and she's good, and you can make a case for her. Johannes is kind of like the safe play where he's going to run, he's going to fire, he loves the course, he's got the great style, but who's he been beaten? So I wouldn't take a short price on him. I mean, notable speech is a classic winner. Johannes is beating, Almendaris. And Dicey Mochara. It's a little different level of competition there. So I think the Euros have the edge here. Rematuelle is a very, very good filly. She was amazing in the Prix de la Forêt last time out. Now, she got beat by Porta Fortuna, which doesn't hurt Ramatuelle. It just makes Porta Fortuna look better.
Mm-hmm.
So I know that you like her. I'll let you carry the torch on her, other than the fact that this is a very, very deep race, and not, any one of 6 or 7 would not surprise me.
Yeah, I've got it 7-1-6-9. It's the same 4 that you just talked about in there. Porta Fortuna, Ramatuelle, the 2 3-year-old fillies. I like them. I like 3-year-old fillies in this race historically. I think Porta Fortuna's got just a beautiful turn of foot about her, timed right by Tom Markhand, and I think they can get the victory here with that short stretch run at Del Mar. Ramatuelle from the rails, got some speed, but also a filly who's just high class. And of course, Notable Speech has to be respected in here. So I think the 3 Europeans run the show here. And then I've got the 4th finisher in here being Johannes for me. But if I'm playing multi-race wagers, I'm just going with the 3 Europeans. I think this is a 3-deep situation where you got 3 high-quality runners who aren't far separated. They won't be far separated, I don't think, on the tote board. You've got them 3.5, 4, and 5-1, and I think that's kind of the way it's going to look. Around post time, I think all 3 will get some play in here. We do have 2 Americans though that deserve some betting action, Johannes and Carl Spackler, and they're going to get bet a little bit. We don't always have Americans in low or mid single digits in a Breeders' Cup mile. So that helps if you like the Europeans in here from a gambling standpoint. Mm-hmm. I don't think Carl Spackler or Johannes can beat all 3 of these. Could they run second and split some of them up? I just think of these 3, one of the 3 almost has to be better on this day because they're just 3 such high quality individuals, the 2 fillies and then the Colt Notable Speech. So I would try to get through here with the 3 of them, but I'm really bullish on Porta Fortuna. So, 7 over the 169, kind of the way I'd look at the exactas. If Johannes could get in there, maybe underneath in the exacta, that could make for a nice return there. But I'm on Porta Fortuna pretty strongly here. In fact, if I had to make a bold single, I just talked about using an all in the Breeders' Cup sprint. If you're looking at pick 4s, pick 5s, the sprint isn't a place for me to narrow down. I would be gutsy here and single a filly who probably won't be favored, but she'll be in the top 3 choices. Give me Porta Fortuna in here in the mile, and she's going to be one of my major leans the back half of the card that I'm going to need. If I'm going to hit the multi-race wagers, I'm going to need somebody who's not obvious, and she's the one I'm going to need.
I'll tell you one other horse I want to throw in, just as a mention,
Sure.
And I will have him on my ticket, maybe the 2nd or 3rd, Diego Velasquez, if you go back and watch his video of his last 2 races, this horse is a Franco colt. He's a great looking colt with a turn of foot. But when I say a turn of foot, I mean, he's been running his races and he's been drawing away, but I don't think he's got that instant acceleration that you may need on this tight course. Mm-hmm. But he's a really, really good colt, a Franco colt. I mentioned Aidan O'Brien won his last 2 races, Group Company, and I have him at 8-1. He might go higher than that just because of the contention.
Yeah.
But when you got Aidan and Moore and a colt who's won his last 2 group races overseas by many lengths, he's throwing some clunkers. But if he's on his game, I wouldn't want to lose a big payoff because he beat me. Let's put it that way.
So one thing about the European form is you see that way more often than the U.S. form, the clunkers that you mentioned, Jeff. Yeah. They're off and then they come back and they bounce back. I mean, City of Troy got beat his first start back of the year, and then they got him on form. Our races in the U.S., the way they're spaced out and trained up to, nobody has a throwaway race anymore. And you don't get many clunkers in American racing amongst the tops of the division. The good horses, they just kind of keep them in peak form. They space the races out. They get 3 or 4 good starts out of them a year, and that's just kind of the way it goes. But if you handicap and you look at this European form, if you see a bad race every once in a while, that's just the way it is over there, I mean, there's when Franco comes along and runs off a win streak, that's like all time, and people talk about for 25, 30 years, here in the U.S., I mean, we'd be talking about Idiomatic from last year winning 7 in a row, and it's just like kind of forgotten, Right. In the European form, horses get beat regularly, and they run some mystifying performances, and they bounce back from them. So, don't look at inconsistency as a knock on a European.
And if you see a bad race, check the ground, because I look at Diego Velasquez, and he's got some bad races. In the French Derby, heavy ground. I mean, some of these horses won't run on it,
Mm-hmm.
But those races mean nothing to me when you're coming out and running here on this pool table top of a turf course at Del Mar. I mean, it's a different game, and Diego Velasquez likes firm. So whether or not he's good enough, he's got a 1:17 time form, rating 2 races back when he won a race by 7. That's not quite good enough to win, but it's good enough to put him in the fray. And who knows? Lightly raced son of Frankel. Who's to say we haven't seen his best?
Let's go to the final race on Breeders' Cup Saturday, the Breeders' Cup Dirt Mile here. 2-turn race at Del Mar for the mile race. You got speed on the inside with Saudi Crown. You got Skippy Longstocking out in the 14. This race looks like it could have a pretty hot pace to me, Jeff. Sees the Gray's best races have all been on the front end. Wire to wire in the Pennsylvania Derby, wire to wire in the Preakness Stakes. Tumba Rumba's coming out of a really fast race in the ACAC at Churchill in the fall. This is a race that's got some pace about it. Moof doesn't take a back seat too far, usually right up in the mix as well. So there's a lot of horses in this race who might want a piece of it. I'm going to try to find somebody from a little bit off the pace, but you would think at a mile, you don't want to be coming from the clouds, right? And you've mentioned this over and over about Del Mar and the short stretch and the expected speed bias that we anticipate for this. You don't want to be coming from too far out of it, but for me, I think somebody's getting past in the lane in this race. That's the way I'm going to look for it.
Well, I think from the rail, Saudi Crown is absolutely committed to go. I mean, and they're going to let him roll out of there and try to demoralize anybody who's going to try to chase him. And who knows, maybe he gets loose on the lead, especially the track is biased towards the inside lanes and biased towards speed, which by now in the 12th race we'll know one way or the other. But the horse that I ended up picking on top, and he's not a single, but Domestic Product, I thought his last 2 races in the Dwyer, which was a mile, but it was a 1-turn mile, and then the Jerkins, which he won that race, going 7/8. Both were by far career top numbers. Most recently is 106 by number, very fast. 3-year-old developing colt by Chad Brown. Now, I had asked you before, earlier, do you think he's a 1-turn horse or can he go 2 turns? And he had some decent races around 2 turns, but he won the Tampa Bay Derby. But is it possible that he's just a better horse now, and maybe that's a concern that I really shouldn't have, because he has won 2 turning. Plus, he's got 2 terrific races, and he's got Flavian Pratt. I mean, that's kind of like a difference maker, I think. So I ended up at 7-2 with Domestic Product, thinking as you are thinking that the pace is going to be fast one way or the other. And he's got the opportunity with Pratt to sit somewhere in the middle and let the heat take care of itself. And if he's a 1-turn horse, maybe he still wins it. But if he's not, maybe he wins it by more than we think. What do you think?
I think he's better around 1 turn.
Yeah,
I think the Pegasus. I think the Pegasus Stakes is there on the form, right? That was there between the Derby and the Dwyer, and they went the 1 turn in the Dwyer, they went the 1 turn in the Jerkins. The Practical Jokes to me just are better around 1 turn.
No question. I can't deny it.
And look, he gave around and got 6 lengths to Tuscan Sky, who's a nice horse, but Tuscan Sky's not winning this race, and couldn't run with him in the stretch of the Pegasus going around 2 turns. I would try to beat him at a short price. If you were going to tell me Domestic Product was 7, 8, 9, 10 to 1 in this race, then maybe you say that's worth the risk and the gamble. But as one of the favorites, and you're right in making him the favorite in here, and I think he's going to be right there as the favorite, I just wouldn't take him around 2 turns as the favorite. He's got to show it to me at a shorter price in there. Yeah. I don't know where Muth is after that last race. He's trained well since, but I don't know where he's at in his game. The horses that really interest me in this particular spot are the 8 Post Time, the 12 Mufasa, or the 12 Mufasa, and the 9 horse in here, Domestic Product, is the underneath horse who may flatten out. But I think Post Time or Mufasa are the 2 horses that interest me most. I worry that Post Time might get a little too far back, like he did in the Whitney against top class horses going short. This horse is probably going to be 6-7 lengths off the lead and have to make a move. But there's a horse who can pick him up and lay him down in a short burst. It's Post Time. If you've ever watched his races, he's like the head of the lane and you think he's not doing anything, and all of a sudden, he's got a good move in him, and he ran a really good race in the Whitney when only getting beat 2 lengths by Arthur's Ride. Arthur's Ride would probably be the favorite in this particular spot. Mufasa's last couple have been really good. I don't know about Mufasa going the 2 turns. It's the same thing. It's the Practical Joke, but you're getting 12 to 1 to find out. That's the difference. Domestic Product, Mufasa kind of look the same to me on paper. and you're getting 12 to 1 on one, and the other one's going to get bet. So that's where I'm looking at. I don't have a great feel for this race. This is a race where, like, I'm talking like this is why I need Porta Fortuna. If I'm going to play the pick 4, pick 5 at the end of the card, because the sprint and the dirt mile, I do not feel good about confidence on top. I think a lot can happen in these races, and I'm going to have to go very deep in those races. But maybe post time, and Mufasa would be the one to take the price on. But this is a tough one. You could go a lot of different directions. If Seize the Gray wins, you're not shocked. If Saudi Crown wins, you're not shocked. I mean, Skippy, I don't like the 14, obviously. But
you toss him from the 14?
No.
You still have to throw him in.
Yeah, I still got to use him. I mean,
you can't say he couldn't win. I don't.
He's
like
got the best rider in
gamble,
America on dirt, and Irad Ortiz. I mean, just. Yeah, I mean, I'd have to use him because I'm already looking at using like 4, 5, 6, right? And Kurt Hoover, our old buddy, one of the really good realistic handicappers I've ever talked with over the years. But Kurt's got a rule: if you use more than half the field, you use all the field, right?
Of course.
So, and I think that's a good rule of thumb. Sure. And I'm starting to get up around that 7 range in this race that of 14 that I think could be in there. I don't want to use it all in here, but I guarantee you, if I don't have Skippy Longstocking in here, I don't think I'm covering the race properly. I think it's that kind of race.
Really is. It's a great race to go out. You need to get out in the 12th race. I'm sure you'll find somebody on the sheet here that you can bet on and have a little bit of a chance. Yeah. But no, I have the same concern with domestic product. I don't know what to make of Muth. I mean, he's trained really well since his debacle in the California Crown. But he trained really well before that, and he ran bad. So I don't know what to make of him. It's Baffert.
There's a couple Bafferts this weekend that are in the same boat. You start with the Friday races and all those good 2-year-old stakes winners that he's had, but which one's kind of, move in the right direction towards the juvenile? Of course, we know non-compliance going to scratch out of the juvenile fillies. He'll lose one of his main players there, but I'm the same way with Baffert when it comes to the juvenile. I know we're not handicapping the Friday card here, but I kind of like Citizen Bull a little, but I don't know where these Baffert horses quite are. And so we'll just have to be kind of price sensitive and see how everything shakes out with that. But Jeff, it's been a lot of fun handicapping these 9 races with you for Saturday. Again, want to remind fans that you'll have Friday analysis in written form, so be sure to check out the blog section, expressbet.com, and at news.first.com, and get all your analysis of the Friday races. You've got some best bets up there for Thursday already if you're playing Del Mar on the Thursday card. So we appreciate everybody tuning into the podcast this week. We'll be back on Tuesday with the It's Official podcast. It'll wrap everything up. If you're new to us, we welcome you to join us each Tuesday and Friday throughout the regular racing season. Each and every week, we have a recap podcast. It's Official on Tuesday. And then this First Call podcast handicaps 8 stakes races for each Saturday. We usually release that early afternoon each and every Friday. Jeff, final word on the Breeders' Cup in your home state of California.
Well, just as we went through the 9 races on Saturday, there are a lot of directions you can go on. I mean, every race is got several that could win. Mm-hmm. And we've tried to lay out the contenders, but I think I can't remember the last time I've done Breeders' Cup handicapping where I've been so unsure. You know what I'm saying? If that's the word. I mean, usually I don't mind if I'm right or wrong, but I want to have a strong opinion. Mm-hmm. I don't have that many because the contention is so deep. That's the bad news, but the good news is if you nail a couple of these, you're going to get paid off. You don't have to be right in every race. Find 1 or 2 $20 winners or so, and you'll probably be set. And I think we've discussed enough on these races that there are several 10, 12, 15, even 20 to 1 shots that you could play and have a reasonable chance for success. So it's a fun couple of days for sure. And challenging, but that's the way it should be. And we just wish everybody luck and have a great time and enjoy great racing. And we hope that we helped you a little bit anyway.
Good luck playing the Breeders' Cup this weekend with First Bet and Express Bet.